Welcome to our new podcast, The Uncool. I'm Yanling.
And I'm Sean.
And usually on our usual freelance creative exchange podcast, we talk to professionals about how to supercharge their freelance careers. But after speaking to so many people, we were thinking, how did they get so cool? I mean, in order to achieve their successes and fame, they must have been pretty uncool at a certain point.
No matter what kind of successes they have, we get our guests to dish out all the awkward moments that led them to where they are now. Some are even putting the cool in uncool jobs.
So let's go talk to the Uncools.
Okay, so we are socially distanced again.
Yes, adhering to all COVID guidelines.
Phase 2 HAO.
Mm-hmm. So Sean, in the last episode, you said that when you were young, you wanted to be in TV when you grew up.
I did, yes.
But when I was young, did you know that one of the things that I wanted to be was a teacher?
You, a teacher. I really cannot imagine.
Mm-hmm. Just maybe not the discipline mistress.
Well, they were like the worst. I mean, like, you don't ever want to be anywhere close to them because it's going to be a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Well, our next guest was a former discipline mistress, so that was pretty uncool. but she's quite cool today. I think she's this Instagram model. She runs her own business, and I think her business is really, really, really quite cool.
Wow.
So you should go meet Carean.
So Carean, you're super multifaceted, right? You own a writer studio, which is a kids learning center in one way. Okay, you are also a model, right? And you have other creative ventures as well.
Yes.
So you are like the original #bossbabe. How did you get so cool?
I guess everything came from my, my choices, in life. For example, I wanted to be a policewoman when I was younger.
Wow.
And I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, followed by probably a scientist. My sis is a forensic scientist, like herself.
Yeah.
And I chose language. And when you choose language, it's something pretty free-flowing, creative. And that's when I feel that it's a form of art, isn't it?
Mm.
So where language is concerned, I would choose to write, as much as I love to read. So when you do that, you find yourself more expressive. And that's when I found a correlation between expressing myself, having been a speech and drama teacher before, and writing writing expressively and freely, and gelling the two together.
Mm.
And therefore, so many things have happened.
But how do you go from wanting to be a police officer,
Mechanical engineer.
Yes.
into writing? I mean, they're very different.
Yes, they are very different. Probably because then I realized that there's a lot of interest in drama. As you know, all these came from the movies and dramas we have watched, the stories that we have read. So every child wants to be everything. So when I found my gravitation towards writing, I told myself that hey, I'm here to stay for this, and I hope to be a language teacher to that extent and inspire other kids to read and write more, to be more expressive in their lives. And I think this is what life is all about, to be able to sum up whatever life experiences you have with a pen, with your words.
I'm just trying to imagine your parents. You're like, when growing up, like, I want to be a policewoman. Oh yeah, I can. I want to be a mechanical engineer. Oh, that's fine. Oh, I want to do drama. Like, huh?
Yes. Pretty different, yeah.
Did they have? Did you have any
like
that kind of reaction from them, or were they shocked that they go against why suddenly from an engineer to
drama?
Writer?
My parents, quite interestingly, although my dad's a really rigid person, he encourages us to be who we are, who we want to be, and soon you find your life path. Yes.
I think family support is very important, don't you think?
Yeah, it's pretty important. We're pretty close.
And now you also teach this to our next generation, which I feel is it's a great cause, first of all. And I think it's especially challenging. Yeah. I don't know, because I've never taught before, but just looking at my nephews and my niece, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really don't want to be your teachers. Do you feel that sometimes?
Well, sometimes I do. Yes,
that face just says it all.
Sometimes. But I guess So, okay, my friends are always telling me, what keeps you bouncing around? You're like an energy bunny every day. So sometimes I feel that I draw energy from the children. And when I teach them, sometimes you have to scale down to their level, find out what they are thinking. Every child wants to be understood and they want to be heard. And there's so much they want to do. They need someone like us with more experiences, maybe, to be able to encourage them in the right direction. Yes, and most of the time, I get my students to either draw or write out or speak to me in their own ways. I think it helps because I have this specialization in arts appreciation when I was 21, through 24. So it really helps me a lot to find out how art can be a very multifaceted form of expression in everyone's life. So it could happen, in a form of in a pictorial form, in a written sense, and even through songs. So I guess this is what I see in every child. There's so much in them. They need a teacher to guide them. And every time I want to give up, this is what I'll tell myself. All right, you don't, because you never know what the next child could be. So interestingly, I have a boy called Joel Lim. He scored pretty well. So when I was asking my students, how many of you can tell me your ambitions? Ambition is a very archaic question. How many of us do you ask your children what your ambition is going to be? But everybody told me, I want to be a lawyer, a doctor. And Joel said, I'll be the next president of Singapore. And everyone laughed at him, including myself. But he didn't laugh, He told me, I'm very serious. I'm going to join grassroots. So you never know what every child wants to be.
Speaking of, you were saying that it's quite an archaic question.
Yes.
I think teaching in itself is quite archaic in a sense. How have you made it so much more than that?
Everyone has a teacher. But in the modern sense, or rather, it has been a DNA of every teacher to flow with the times. Because every teacher has that innate child in us who wants to follow the times and the trend. So I think it is one of the most modern jobs we can ever have. Because we evolve according to society, we are influenced by it, we pass on that entire love of learning to teach and teaching people to learn. And there is no way a teacher could abandon societal trends, and environmental concerns. And in dealing with the students, we can't abandon the needs that they have, the voices they want to unleash and speak. They want to be heard, the desire to want to be heard. So I guess it would be one of the most modern jobs ever, because it's always evolving.
We're trying to imagine, so you're saying how you're trying to keep up the times and all, and I think everyone can agree last year wasn't the best of times to be a teacher. I mean, when you lose your face-to-face classes and everything, you go on Zoom or Teams and you start teaching from that way.
Yeah, that's a huge shift, yeah. The moment we knew that we had to continue teaching, perhaps online, so everyone just came together and asked ourselves, now, it's not about business viability here, but how can these children continue learning? And given that everyone else is affected, this means parents are also affected, right? So if parents are also affected, it also means that how can we help them to feel better with their jobs and yet take care of their children, because they're going to be home 24/7 with the children.
So education is not just about just the kid, it's about the parent.
The parents.
as
So
well.
sometimes I see that we are tools or we are bridges between parent and child.
I don't know, I'm just so fascinated by it because in the past, when I was going through school, it's so different, right? My parents would always let the teacher have the final say, because they are our source of discipline outside of our parents.
Yes.
But now I see my sister and her kids, and they have WhatsApp groups with every teacher, every class. I don't know, I just think it's so difficult right now. Yeah. So that bridge, I think it's even truer now than it was, even just 20 years ago.
I guess. But there's a child in all of us. So even in ourselves, we reach out to that inner child and we speak to ourselves and find out what do these kids of this century need? What kind of stresses are they going through? How do they want to be heard? There are children who are very young and they are already on social media accounts. They are conscious.
Yeah.
They're also conscious about how their friends look at them, how their parents would feel. So that trust has to be developed over time, the rapport. The small nuances like, you look a little sleepy. Would you like some tea? I said, oh, tea. So why is tea good? Some caffeine, and I'll explain to them. So over time, that care, concern, and the devotion to a client or to a child, over time, they feel the trust in you. And that's when we'll slowly peel off layers and layers of that confused self in them to understand what they really need. And when you gain that trust and they feel the support, you can do anything with them. You unlearn what they have learned. You pack in new knowledge for them. Give them that strength to know it's fine to handle this question now. I could ask my teacher, I could create a main idea, and I'm fine making mistakes. She'll teach me how to embrace it, overcome it, and correct myself. Yes.
So you've been running Writer Studio for how many years already?
I guess we've run it since 2012, so about 9 years already.
Was there ever a moment in this 9 to 10 years where you thought, okay, I'm never gonna to get over this, I'm finished now, but then you turned that moment, the uncool moment, into something cool?
That's cool. That's a cool question as well, right? Okay, so I think we started out with full on passion. It's just pure teaching and so forth. But then you see, other centers are springing up. They are doing English tuition. You are doing English enrichment too. So how do we keep our DNA? The struggle is how I want to deliver that DNA in us, that we want to build not just a child who loves English, who loves language, but is a resilient writer, an analytical reader, and a convincing speaker, without feeling that I'm here just for the grades. But yet, when all this is done, I can do well for myself in the exams, maybe for PSLE. It is the difficult part is how do you get out of that mode where you are labeled as a tuition center, all right, to a tuition center that cares and develops. That was the struggle I had, because parents would always see, you are another enrichment center and I want you to do this. So
they look at you guys as service in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, as a service
provider.
And you know what, I'm going to enroll my child in your center for 3 months and therefore I expect to see an A. But no, we don't. We build success through literacy. It's going to be not transient, not temporal. It's going to last. It's going to last you till the rest of your lives. That's why I guess in doing so, my journey in transforming WS is not transforming per se. The core DNA is always there, but I see it essential that we put everything into a visible whole for everyone to understand. My students will graduate, and the very keen ones would stay on as intern writers for us as we champion our online magazine on leadership, student leadership. They'll write for us, and we'll have these little ones telling me, okay, I want to write to convince because I built all these skills at the center. And then I've got this platform to be able to deliver this still and yet be recognized. So leadinnovate.net is our online magazine. I would say 80% of the staff are interns who have graduated from us.
Wow.
Yes, and the youngest is 13.
If you distill everything now you just said, from a business owner point of view, what do you think it's the most important traits that people should understand if they ever want to start a small business in the same space?
Yeah, if they want to start a small business in the same space, you always have lots of noise around you. You've got like people telling you, no, you're not good. You can do better. Look, they're doing this. You shouldn't be doing this. So all these, we ask ourselves. I remember Steve Jobs' quote. He did mention something. Although he's really not from anywhere near, and he's so great and awesome with the iPhone invention and all. His quote reminds me to this effect. All right, that sometimes when you are small and you hit a certain plateau and you're satisfied, right? There's always something to unlearn. Perhaps revisit your own programs and products and services, unlearn, fall back to basics and question yourself, how could this be done better? So to succeed, a constant humility to reinvent yourself, review your products, reinvent to fit the new market demands in the next year. and always be on the ground to listen. Listen to the staff, listen to the teachers, the voices of the children and the customers. Even as a boss, don't leave the ground. Find your means to come to the ground. That's why I teach too.
I'm just so inspired by that, because I think that is that missing key. Because a lot of places, you just learn how to do something, be it language, be it, your maths, your science. And then after that, really you come out of school thinking, what did I do this for? Like, I am not using, you hear this more often than anything after people graduate. I never use anything that I learned inside school before. But no, you're actually translating all of this into something very real world, that people can, and they use it to actually communicate effectively.
There has to be something more than PSLE, more than the O
Yeah,
levels.
exactly. Yeah. So I'm just mind blown a little bit here. And it's such a simple concept, but you just blown my mind. And for you, right, you also have quite a little bit of following as well on your social media. Like, was that intentional, or are you growing it as part of your business, as part of a persona for Writer Studio, or how did that even come about?
Yeah, so I'm a quite a reticent person actually by nature. So you can say that those social media posts are extremely are just my form of expression. It wasn't really intimate, but if you could read between the lines, you would see that there's a lot of intensity to it from various points of view, as a business owner, as a teacher, as a writer, and as a friend. So there have been lots of messages which I have not really filtered, but or even have the time to read now. But I would say that to sum it off, every one of us has a certain form of vulnerability and uncertainty, and to a large part, my writings have spoken to them and given them strength. So you're in an enrichment center and you're teaching writings for exams or something like that to that effect. But I always have that voice in me wanting to express myself through other forms of writing. So I write poems, and I've produced some stories of my own when I went to UK to study. That was in 2017. So we did writing. So you'd be very surprised that when I brought the same kind of writing style that I've learned here on our side of the world over, it was rejected. My first piece was rejected, and I was extremely offended. And I asked why. It took me about 2 years to understand that to deliver a piece of writing, it requires more depth than that, you see. So I did more practices, and when I have all these works out there had to be somewhere to publish it. But the quickest way for me was to be heard. So I wanted to write something just online, and I started from there. So then I wondered, where do I get the pictures from, Because I'm not really a photographer. Where do I get the pictures from? So the best way is to then express it, you see, through the eyes. So there's a lot of emphasis on the eyes, because our eyes represent so many things, as we know, right? They're the window, our eyes are the windows to the soul. And of course, a large part of me was about colors, about fashion. And it so happens that I was speaking to someone and about the fact I'm a teacher and I love to write. And he said, I found that we could work with you in having you, let us see what we can do to bring this concept across. And then it happened. Yeah, he's the auditor.
Let me very quickly. So you went from we're talking about all this writing, and it all came down from your background. Which part of it comes from your background of being an auditor, in your previous life? I mean, you've clearly not gone on the path of least resistance, otherwise you'll still be an auditor. Right?
Yeah, actually everything kind of fell into place. So when I was 7 years old, my mom found me squatting at our, we live in a public housing in a flat. So I was squatting there at the door, selling erasers. They were salvaged from the lost and found corner of the school. 5 cents per piece or 10 cents per piece. I was my little entrepreneur already. And then by afternoon, I'll be telling my siblings, I have 3 of them, to sit down. Let me teach you something right now. Look at the board. Yeah, there's a cane right here. So all these came about. So by 13, the year 2000, I have my own website. Yeah, and I was already soliciting for business online and finding how I could use my language skills to describe things that these business owners sell and placing them online, you know. And I actually had customers. Yes.
Wow.
So
I'm just imagining like the Peanuts comic strip. There's always this kid standing there with a lemonade stand.
in fact, behind those comics, it was something very intense, you know. The boy himself, I think the author himself, when he was young, he had a very vulnerable childhood, very low self-esteem, and he expresses his art. He expresses his thoughts about being bullied in school, not being accepted, you know, and he professes everything in those comics, and nobody knew that he would.
I'm just sitting here wondering. When were you ever uncool? I mean, you made selling erasers so cool.
When I was most uncool. Okay. I guess the most uncool was to probably accept a job, you know, in MOE as a discipline mistress. Can I say that? No.
Oh wow.
Yes, ultimate uncoolness. Sorry, I have to say that.
Discipline mistresses were uncool, but okay. All right, we are in agreement here.
Yeah, uncool, yeah. Because I remember my principal telling me, oh, today you will be the discipline mistress and remember to wear that face. I said, what kind of face? That face. I said, oh, okay. That was very uncool because I realized that, well, every child who probably broke a rule, yes, it's important to tell them that they are wrong, but rather than, you know, creating that persona that you must behave like a disciplined mistress in the old times, you know, you have to blare out and you have to bare your fangs, you know, curl your lips and look like a vampire. No, you don't. You could. We could deal with children in different ways these days. I'm sure they'll understand. Yeah.
The face that scares 2,000 kids.
Yes. Yeah, it was pretty hard because I was, you know, very different. Yeah. So sort of changed me a little bit.
Right.
But because I was young, I was very young, a very young teacher, and then the next best, you know, role model that I had would be in my mind that discipline mistress from when I was younger, you know, primary school. So I have to try my best to relate to model her.
I guess all these kind of things is what makes it so relatable in some ways, right? You talk about as you are creating your product, you know, people can read and subconsciously most of the time read between the lines and say, oh yeah, I sort of get that.
Yeah, and it's all passion, you know. In every product, we look for that little passion.
Yeah.
So long as it's not easily replicable or replicated from someone. Yeah, every product itself has something to be appreciated. Yeah, who's the mind behind it? And I like it. And I want my students to know who's the mind behind your essay. If you hold a pen, if you wield the pen, it's mightier than the sword. So the pen itself has power. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people find that, you know, replicating is a lot simpler than it was before. If they wanted to replicate something which they've seen, they will watch, they go online, follow the tutorial, and then they learn it. So how has this trend, especially that's happened in the last few years, changed the way teaching is done now today?
The thing about Writer Studio is that we don't go all out to find out what other schools are doing or what competition is doing. We know what MOE is teaching and developing, but we'll always ask ourselves if we were to relate this to teaching creative writing, okay? On the internet, there could be many forms of writing styles to follow, right? There'll be a common pattern. But I always teach my students, when you do your research, or my teachers who are doing research, to be very discerning and find out which of these examples would speak to you and it grabs your attention, which is more riveting, right? And find out why that piece of writing stands out and it rivets you, really, you know, it grips you. So when we teach creative writing, we always ask the students to think of a plot that could relate to the theme, the pictures given. But yet, when you are writing it, you could understand how you want the story to end. Or rather, plan with the objective in mind. Every story, for instance, comes with a message. You know, it can come with a message of, say, making the wrong decisions in life. So many students would talk about, I want to write an essay about cheating in the exams or taking some of these things that don't belong to me. You know, very mediocre plots. But these days, things have gone a little deeper. For instance, some of the students would give me unique plots such as, okay, I could talk about, they have given suggestions about borrowing money to play games in the arcade. So that kind of, those stories itself would end with a certain moral to it. For instance, making life choices that are important to them, and yet it's very current. Because we have some students indeed whom I see them in class after class telling them, hey, I want to purchase something from the vending machine, but I don't have money. Can you lend me, please? And the story evolved further into, can you lend me this and I'll keep it, and the next day I'll borrow from someone else to pay you back, and the cycle repeats. So I see this in the children and ask them, how can we develop a story out of this? And if we plan with that in mind, what kind of ending would you give to your story? So when we talk about things that could be replicated from the internet, what we cannot replicate are the concepts and the motives of the writing that every child has to be encouraged to see. That when you write with that purpose in mind, okay, falling back to very, very conventional writing requirements in the exams, like we always encourage the students to look at the audience, purpose, and context behind the writing. So if we were to remind every child that yes, or every teacher, yes, teaching can be replicated, but in essence, can there be new concepts and trends that we can latch on and deliver that through our work and writing? The authenticity will never be neglected. In fact, it can be harnessed to send that message. Because if being a Chinese, Jack Ma could shine on the world stage, right? And we don't know who's the next big one in Singapore. Any one of us can just shine with that authenticity. And we want the children in Singapore, not just in Writer Studio, to do that. We have to bridge the divide between the digital natives of today, the young children, and digital migrants like perhaps me or my predecessors. So education in the future would have to reach out to the children in the way that appeals to them.
I don't think it's a small message at all. Because I love that theme that you're going with, where it's not just about good language. Yeah. It is about what you want to say, right?
And be it our choice of text, in the way we deliver lessons, right? We have to strike that common empathy, understanding that is very subtle. So lots of observation has to be done, even more than before, and we can't take things for granted. Yeah.
I think there's also this point, right, where being a teacher, I mean, I used to want to be a teacher, but that died because I don't have the patience. But for you, right, I think you're sort of changing that perception as well. A lot of people think of teachers as being very uncool. They're like, you're the cher, But you are the cool teacher. So how do you have a certain formula that you want to let teachers know?
How do you become a cool teacher?
How do you become a cool teacher?
Move with the times. Move with the times and the trend. Yes. Yeah. I remembered my principal wanted to have this twilight feel and aura on the night of Mid-Autumn.
Okay.
So imagine Christmas trees, right?
Okay.
He wants that effect, yeah. And we have got 6 coconut trees, palm trees, in our school. So you can imagine, it might be cool or uncool for me to climb that tree.
What?
I climbed that tree. So, strung up 6 trees with fairy lights.
Yourself?
And that night, me and another friend, yeah. So all six trees were lit up that night. And when he came in, 1, 2, 3, pop! Wow, you got the lights. Yeah.
So guys,
and we felt very cool then. Yeah, I guess in life this shows that whenever we're thrown with a problem, always think of a solution. And if we can, not ask how. Not ask how can I do that to the person who gave you the instruction, but how can I do that because it's a good challenge. So that's what I.
Always taking initiative. So we are all going to Google now which school has 6 coconut trees,
if
and then we know
Miss
which school you're in.
If you were taught by Miss O and you had palm trees lit up in your school that night, it was because of her. Yeah. What do you see for yourself as the #bossbabe?
I'll be more collaborative, even more collaborative with the people I work with the students, with the parents, And that's what I want to be, really, where my heart is. So I see the need for mutual support, strength, and shared ideology being very important. So collaborations are always very important. So moving forward, we'll want to draw strengths from wherever we can and move forward together.
So Carean, if people want to find you to collaborate or just to look up more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, they could drop me an email, and you could find that at writerstudio.com.sg.
If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to The Uncool or rate us 5 stars on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Just search for Freelance Creative Exchange and you can find more episodes of The Uncool or others in our series. And then you click follow.
Also, share with us and celebrate the uncool moments by going to any social media platforms and using the hashtag FCE Uncool.
We want to hear from you, and remember, it's cool to be uncool.